and we'll do a roll call. Heather, could you check us off here? And just a reminder to everybody to say where you're calling in from.
Thank you. Yes. All right, I'll get us kicked off with Stephen.
Hey, Steve Borgsdorf, present, Ann Arbor, Michigan.
Great. Jennifer is not here. Alan.
Alan Haber, Damray, France.
Sarah.
Here from Ann Arbor.
Jeffrey.
Jeff Henney, I'm here from Ann Arbor.
And Camilla. Doesn't look like she's here yet. Rita.
Here from Ann Arbor.
Oh, I see Jennifer is joining us. Just a moment. Alice.
Alice Ralph here in Ann Arbor.
Frank.
Here in Eastport, Michigan.
Adam.
Adam Zemke, present here in Ann Arbor.
And Jennifer.
Present from Somerset, Kentucky.
Wow.
Whoa.
That's great. Lucky.
Got to be hot down there, I bet.
You know what? Actually, I'm sitting outside because it's really a pretty pleasant evening. So, but I learned that people don't go for a run at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon here. So you gotta get it done at like 6 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, God.
Yeah,
All right.
if I were in high school, we would be on the marching band practice field at 7 in the morning.
What did you
Because
play, Alice?
Flute, and they put me at right guard, which is the longest step, and I really had to work on that. Like putting a, I don't know, this is the most ridiculous thing I ever heard of. You have to go so many feet per step, you know.
Yeah.
And when you're on the outsides of the swing, you're
It's
taking the longest step. You know, inside, in the middle, you just do little baby steps, but they put me on the outside. So anyway, you do the hard things in the cool weather. That's what you do.
Well, we'll go ahead and get things rolling here.
I'm just gonna, sorry, Adam, I think you all can see me, but I didn't get called on. I am here in Ann Arbor.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
It doesn't really matter. Just for the record, I just wanted to say here and where I'm at.
Can't forget
Thank you,
Erica.
Erica.
She's our CM, for God's
Yeah,
sake.
there you go.
Yeah.
Minor details. So I think, Heather, you should forget me next time.
We'll take turns forgetting each one of you.
So we'll go ahead and we can do an approval of the agenda. Heather, do you want to highlight, because we did have some late pieces here a little bit. I know you sent an email, which we really appreciate. Just any additional items here?
Yeah, there was something that Jeffrey submitted, which is a report by the initiating committee. So I'll let him take that over when we get to, or you can let him take that over when we get to member news and updates. And then the other item was something that Councilmember Briggs and Adam put together regarding trying to move the food truck idea forward.
Perfect. Are there any amendments to the agenda as written or as posted? All right. Could we get a motion to approve?
I'd move to approve the agenda.
All right.
Second.
Couple seconds there. All right. All in favor, say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Hi.
Right.
Any opposed? All right. And approval of the minutes of the last meeting. Do we want
There are 2 sets of minutes in there because the one from the previous meeting had been postponed to this meeting. So I think you can do it as a package, or you can take it separately if you'd like to.
any objections to doing it as a package?
No.
Okay. So approval of the minutes from the previous 2 meetings. Could we get a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All right. All in favor, raise your hand or say aye.
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 Any opposed?
I'm
right.
abstaining because I missed both of them. And so my apologies. I'll do better next time.
That's all right.
Oh,
Okay, that takes us to public comment. Heather, do we have any members of the public?
We have one member of the public that joined us that does have their hand up. Robert Black. You should be able to talk now.
Thank you, Heather. I'm Robert Black, as you probably remember. I've been working with the initiating committee. I wish to speak to you tonight on two agenda items, number 7 and 8 on your agenda. I'm going to try to keep this to 2 minutes so Alan can get to bed. I won't do the 3 whole minutes. Agenda item number 7. Congratulations to you on your good progress in the July 7th working session. I watched, and you are beginning to gel as a collaborative group. The process toward alignment is challenging for a group as diverse as you are, yet your ability to listen and speak with mutual respect is laudable. I encourage you to continue to seek more and more alignment and trust that future working sessions will be scheduled to allow 100% of council members to participate. And then concerning agenda item number 8, as you consider tonight a future design process, I encourage you to ensure that you have sufficiently prepared a foundation of material to stand on, including such things as a clear and concise summary of the most useful findings from the Center of the City Task Force, and B, a structured outline of the desired physical elements you ultimately envision for the Commons. This will allow you to prepare a thoughtful and well-defined RFQ, RFP to secure the guidance of design professionals. You may even desire to start with a preliminary schematic design phase with clear outcomes and a near-term schedule. Taking a small step like this would allow an important incremental step to optimize any monetary expenditures and at the same time invite and solicit input and participation from potential partners, both within and around the Commons block. Any one or more of these potential partners may bring insights, ideas, and resources that will effectively leverage your expenditures while at the same time living out the basic principles of the Commons: diversity, participation, and inclusion. I wish you a productive meeting tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Robert?
And we have one person that joined us on the phone. If you would like to talk, you can press *9 to raise your hand. All right. You should be able to talk.
Press *9.
Now you should be able to unmute yourself and talk.
Hello? This is
Hello.
Jeff Crockett. Can you hear me now?
We can.
yes.
Okay. My wife, Christine, and I have lived at 506 East Kingsley since 1980. While a teacher for the Plymouth Cantons Community Schools, I frequently drove by Kellogg Park, a community center for recreation, community events, family, and neighborhood gatherings. Kellogg Park features a wonderful fountain. We have nothing like it in Ann Arbor, and this was a mistake made by early city planners. We believe that with the passage of Prop A, we have the opportunity to correct this mistake. That is why I'm speaking tonight. I want to help. I joined the initiating committee in April after attending a few meetings and becoming impressed with the vision and activism of some amazing volunteers, some of whom serve on this committee and are present tonight. All of the flowers and vegetables for this garden have been donated. We have documented this work with pictures taken of the various stages of the garden and created a log to count hours, which at this point is eclipsed 360. This total does not include time spent in Zoom meetings, email, and phone calls. The actual number is easily over 400 hours. I created a PowerPoint presentation, which has been presented to you with the help of many in the initiating committee. Most of the planting occurred in late May and into mid-June. We created the Green Team, now consisting of 10 members who rotate maintenance duties. We expect the green team to grow as the garden reaches its peak and we begin the planning for 2022. I encourage anyone who wants to join the fund to please contact me and we will add you to the team. I am also giving guided tours of the garden, which started with Council Member Lisa Dish. And this invitation for a tour is extended to all of you. I would be happy to meet you at the garden and tell you the story in person. This project, more than anything else, is about building personal relationships. I am pleased to share with you a proposed sign for the garden that I hope is posted that the green team would like to install on the west boundary. It is 15 inches tall and 8 feet wide. It will be visible from the vision. The logo was created by Robert Black. A QR code will direct the visitor to the initiating committee's website. This sign has been approved by the initiating committee and by Maura Thompson of the DDA. It will be produced and donated by Grafactory, a local sign business. Please let us know what you think. In closing, I would like to thank all of you for your generous donation of time in serving in the Council of the Commons. Thanks also to Maura Thompson for moving parking on weekends and to Ali Ramli for providing water for the garden. We clearly need now to move forward with a short-term plan that includes single-day events such as the proposed market days, bathroom facilities, electrical upgrade, Wi-Fi, and most importantly, seating for both event and recreational use. Just understand that the Ann Arbor City Commons is our field of dreams. If we build it, they will come. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. Anyone else, Heather?
That is it.
All right, wonderful. With that, we'll move on to member news and updates, and we can do a couple of things here. We could do the initiating committee report if you'd like, Jeff.
Sure. If you would like me to do that right now, I can do
Sure.
that.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Can I share my screen, Heather, or do you have to?
You should be able to as a panelist. Let me,
Host disabled participant screen sharing. Yeah. Can you disable that?
let's see. Are you able to do it now?
All right. Let's see. Yep, I think so.
Okay.
So this is a little report to you guys. We're planning a fall food, art, and fun network. We'd probably call it something else, but that's what we've come up with so far. I have anyway. Fan Market. It's 3 events on the Ann Arbor Library lot in Liberty Plaza, and it would start beginning of September and go through mid-November. 3 events. We decided that.
Sorry to interrupt you, but I'm not seeing your full screen. Is everybody else seeing it?
No, I can't see it either.
It's just the ribbon and the top of your screen.
You can't see my full screen? Nothing?
We can see just the, it's basically the header of your web browser. Just says mail.
Can you, Heather, can you put my presentation up? I sent it to you. Just 3 slides.
Let's see.
Unless I go down here, can you see it now?
Nope, not yet.
It's supposed to be showing. Well, anyway, I can just talk through it.
I can try pulling it up. Just a moment. It'll take me.
It's just 3 slides. But while she's doing that, so we decided that it would be great as, you know, nonprofits, the Initiating Committee and Library Green, if we could, you know, start implementing. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay. So we could start implementing what was talked about before, which is getting some food activity going on the site and related. And so what we did was we put together a plan, and we're going to get permitting from the appropriate sources and do all the necessary, you know, requirements for a nonprofit to use the site. And the idea is for us to put this a series, a three event series together, starting the first or second Sunday of September. And as I say, we're calling it Fall Food, Art, and Fun. And let me see if I can. So can you move to the next slide?
Yeah.
Thank you. And here's a kind of, I don't know whether you can see this very well. I sent a report to each one of you through Heather, but it just shows where the stalls of the different vendors would be. We're going to have food vendors, trucks, other kinds of vendors, entertainment like singers and music, and some nonprofits, and of course, central will be the folks in the block neighbors. I've already started talking to them about having a presence there if they want to, and we would like them to have a presence. And if you could go to the next slide, or just if you could move the slide up. So we also have entertainers and kids fun area. We're hoping to have puppet shows, games, and clowns and stuff like that if we can get them organized. We're going to have an information booth, which would be over on the. You can kind of see it there if you can see. It would be the information booth on the whole project on the City Park and Civic Center Commons Initiative would be there, and so that would be the first one, and then we would have two more, probably the first or second Sunday of October and first or second Sunday of November, and probably have some sustainability projects included in collaboration with the Department of Sustainability at the city, who are big supporters of us, and we are a collaborator with them on their website. They have the Commons up there. And also we wanted to do a Future of Ann Arbor visioning game, which we're organizing, that allows people to be creative and imaginative about the future of Ann Arbor. And of course, we'd work with the planners in the city and so forth, and the DDA and so forth to talk about that. Part of the exercise is really to run what I would call a clinical trial or an experiment to do these three things. And that is because it was quite rightly pointed out that although the task force had done great things about getting input from the community, and as was said earlier, we need to look at that carefully, and we have looked at it. We want to elicit more feedback from the community, more diverse feedback, and this series of experiments is one way of doing it, to figure out how people feel about the use of the site, what their interests are, and whether these kind of activities are enjoyable and interesting to them. And of course, we will have in the information booth the opportunity for people to express those thoughts and ideas. It will be properly marketed and signed and all the rest of it. Part of the exercise will involve intensive data collection, images, and feedback collection, the way we did it in the task force. And in particular, Jeff Crockett, who talked earlier, who did the Green Team garden, is very good at collecting data and processing it and so forth and analyzing it. So we will work with him on that. And of course, everything will be properly permitted and insured, and safety, health, and sanitary requirements will be in place. If you could go to the next slide. So funding for this will come from private donations through the Library Green Conservancy, and we already have commitments to fund this. The series itself these series of events will be organized and professionally managed on behalf of the Initiating Committee and Library Green Conservancy by Dana Queen with the support of a volunteer team. Dana is currently the Saline Farmers Market Manager. She previously successfully launched the Dexter Farmers Market and advises and assists the Manchester Acorn Farmers Market. So she has a great deal of experience in running and organizing and marketing these events. She knows the vendors she can pull in, the entertainers. She puts these things together very professionally and very quickly. And she has committed some time to do this. And both the Library Green and the Initiating Committee have been very comfortable and happy with what they've heard from her. Full disclosure, she is my stepdaughter. And so just so people know that. We welcome, please close the door. Sorry about that. Close the door, please. Yeah, I understand. Close the door. Sorry, that's my little grandson. Sorry about that. He's 7 years old. He doesn't quite understand adult Zooms quite yet. Anyway, we welcome all advice, counsel, and support from the Council of the Commons. And as I said, I've sent a little document that reflects mostly this, a few little odds and bits added to it. But that's not what I wanted to report to the Council about this. Thank you.
I think that looks really exciting, Jeff. I think it's very cool. Looks like you've got it well planned out too.
Well, I felt that it was extremely important to do this. If we're going to, launch an experiment and we're going to, this is our public face, we need to do it thoroughly professionally. And so we've all devoted a lot of time and put some money into this to really, put a good face on what we're doing. And so it reflects well, hopefully, on the Council of the Commons, because at the end of the day, you're the public face, to the city government and so forth. But as I say, I welcome any input, advice, ideas, participation from any member of the Council of the Commons. We do have some members that are already engaged, but anybody who wants to participate, be delighted to have them. Adam, if you want to have your business featured there, that would be great, for example. We also will be getting sponsorships. For example, the University of Michigan Credit Union has indicated they are inclined to sponsor this and put some money behind it. And there's a couple of others that have said the same thing. I talked to Ali Ramali and others, and they're all very positive about this. So, Erica, you've got, is that up to you, Heather, to ask, or?
It's up to Adam, actually.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Please feel free.
There's
Alice
four
was first.
people that have their hands up.
Yeah, I think I was third in line. I think Alice was first.
I apologize. I actually cannot see anybody's hands up.
All right, Alice is going first. Adam, we're just taking over.
Yeah, sounds good. Alice, go first. Have at it. Now I can. I don't know what happened.
Well, first of all, Jeff, very impressive program you have outlined. The one thing that gave me pause was who the we are, especially when it comes to the gathering of data and the information booth. We've already run into this problem with the representation of this commission as being conflated somehow with the initiating committee, and they are very different things, as someone has mentioned, or several have mentioned, the difference between a public process and a public commission and a volunteer nonprofit. Who is speaking for whom is just one consideration that I'd like to point out before you get too deep into all of this free labor that you're putting into this. But that's just what I wanted to bring up. It is really much more, your program is very much more better thought out than anything we've seen or had the opportunity to put together otherwise. But I wouldn't want it to kind of be cornered by a technicality, I guess.
Do you want me to respond to that, or?
Yeah.
I don't require a response.
Okay, sure.
Stephen?
Yeah, no, thanks. Thanks for sending it around, and thanks for sort of talking us through it. I thought it looked fantastic. The only thing I wanted to offer by way of thought was in terms of like the data that's being collected. I saw a lot of ideas around like making sure, kind of use it as a chance to find out what people want. Are they using the site, but also maybe ask questions about what they want to see, but also make sure to collect information about what you want when you're running an event there. So we have more hard data about that as far as like facilities wise and things that are obstacles in terms of either in any kind of way, bringing it off or, and executing it, planning it, whatever, the things you wish you would have had or that would have been easier. This is another good opportunity to learn more about that. So, but kudos all around for putting it together. And it sounds like it's going to be happening in the near term, like starting off. So that was great as well. So thank you.
Stephen, I absolutely concur with you, and that will be part of the process. We will iteratively learn what we need to do to make these events successful. So each event will teach us something new, and we will obviously report back that information. Not only will we analyze it ourselves for making things better as we go along, but also report it back.
Right on. And like with a view towards, so like the prior public comment talking about some of the facilities that folks already kind of wish were there, more electrical, Wi-Fi,
right,
bathrooms, these kind of facilities, and just kind of be thinking about that as these events are going forward. Yeah.
Orca?
Yeah, thanks. I concur with what's been said so far. Basically, looks like a great plan, and it's nice to have some kind of official events already in the works for the fall. And I very much kind of in line with what Alice mentioned. I think it's wonderful that initiating committees coming and gathering some input about what we'd like to see, but I definitely see it as this is a nonprofit-led event, and I think it should be pretty clear from the promotion and from kind of how the event would be perceived on site that that's the two nonprofits in the community have worked hard to launch this event series. And so when it comes to the data collection piece, there is certainly, given the rules of these nonprofits, interest in understanding how the space is used. But I do worry a little bit without kind of Alice's concern about how people can get weary about sharing their views about a site. And the task force has collected data. I anticipate that we're going to be hopefully in the RFP process, getting people's thoughts in the design phase. And so the more information that it's always great to ask people's opinions and things like that, but we have to be careful about, we want to make sure that we can use that information in meaningful ways, or that you can use that information in meaningful ways. But I guess be cognizant that people may, when the next time we're asking for their information, they may say, well, I've already provided information twice. Why should I give more thoughts on this? So maybe just connect more with Heather as this is going forward, just to get some sort of staff feedback on this as well.
I absolutely agree with that. And the reason I presented it in the way that I did was not to preempt what the task force did or what the Council of the Commons is going to do. It was simply, I wanted to be helpful because some members of the Council of the Commons had been concerned that we hadn't cast wide enough a net earlier on. And so that's an issue for the Council of the Commons, but I just wanted to be helpful in the process. And, mainly this is about trying to figure out how to do these events well, as, has been mentioned earlier, and learn how to do it better. I'm not trying to interject something into the decisions of the Council of the Commons and the recommendations of the Council of Commons. We're just trying to be helpful, and we're just trying to keep things moving along and giving the community something to relate to on the site as that things are happening. But certainly I'm going to consult with Heather and anybody else, and I should say we, it's not just me, and will not impinge on any of the issues you've raised. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it seems great. I mean, it's a big thing just to get that site activated.
And Adam, if I can just jump in for a second. I just wanted to say I love the idea of testing it, so I think the feedback that you get about how people feel about the event that's taking place, as a use for the space, I think that's going to be valuable input that we haven't really received before, about an event that's actually occurring there.
Yeah, it's action research, basically.
Right, yeah.
Heather, could I ask what the relationship of the data that Jeff and the initiating committee what they collect, I think you kind of said this, that it would be for the initiating committee's use and not necessarily become part of our public process. Is that correct?
It's up to you. I mean, it's up to the city. It's up to you guys. If you want it to be part of the public process, fine. If you don't, that's fine too. I mean, we're certainly, we're trying to be, we want to be collaborative and do what what the council would like in that regard.
Yeah, and I don't see any issue with the initiating committee sharing the information that they've received, data that they've collected with this group. That's certainly fair. We just need to be clear about where it comes from, and that it wasn't necessarily like a city-sponsored event.
Yeah, we're not going
to
say it's a city-sponsored event or that it's the Council of the Commons sponsored event. Okay, we're just simply saying that there are Council of the Commons members involved, and we're letting you know about it because we want, that's our obligation to let you know. It's because I sit on all three. I feel the obligation anyway to report this and let people know and get feedback from you and get advice and help. I mean, this is a community event, and you guys represent the community in many ways, and your input is essential.
Jennifer's had her hand up for a little while.
Thanks, Adam. I wanted to say, first of all, I think that this is such awesome news, and I was really excited to read through your proposal. I would love for other nonprofit or community organizations for you to be the example, the leader, from which they follow or to which they follow, in terms of envisioning use of the space. I don't think it's any secret that I've been very excited to see the space activated for something to benefit the community. And I believe, we need to take baby steps. And so I was very excited to see your proposal. I had one, I think this dovetails with what some of the other feedback, but I would love to get, or just suggest, as part of your data collection, to consider asking, how did they hear about the event? How did they hear about what you're doing? Because I think that'd be really good information and intelligence to collect about the audience. And, to your point about casting a wide net, how well, that's being achieved, and if it's generating any buzz, and we could use that as a benchmark as well for future iterations in terms of how did you hear about this event in this space. But overall, I am hugely supportive of what you're doing, and I think it's just great. So thank you.
Thank you. Could I just ask you, Jennifer, would Spark be interested in participating in some way? Because you're a block partner, so it would be great if you were involved,
Yeah, so I think this is something that needs to be, I bring my experience and my professional activity from Spark to the table here, but I'm not a representative of Spark on this commission. I'm a private citizen who loves Ann Arbor and loves green space. So I would not commit to that in this setting. And in fact, I would probably recuse myself from any conversations at Spark regarding, our involvement, support, et cetera, because obviously I'm quite biased. So I'd ask, one of my colleagues to step in should that happen.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
We'll do Alan and then Sarah next.
Good. Well, I've been involved in the thinking through of this with the initiating committee and with the library Green Conservancy. The Commons is really a bottom-up process, and this is how does community people get together to try and do something on this space, because there's no one else to do it. The city council isn't doing it, and our group as the Council of the Commons is basically advisory. So we need someone in the community, and that's what the initiating committee was recognized by the city council as being sort of the on-the-ground group to get stuff going. And I hope that we can do that as widely as possible. I think there is a problem that the block group has never really been convened. And that is, I hope this process will begin to get all the partners on the block together to begin to see how everyone can benefit from this, beginning action research is a good way of describing it. So it is the initiating committee trying to do something in behalf of the community, and everybody is welcome to join in however. And however the data is to be collected and made available, I think that we could benefit from suggestions of what data people actually want. But seems like a good step to go forward. I hope that it can be more of it, and we'll see how it all goes. I have some other comments about this agenda item, but on this report, I think that the Library Green and the initiating committee has done a good job in getting something to move forward following the discussion from July 7th. That what's the first thing to do? We'll get something going and do it around food. So bring food to the commons, and this is trying to carry that forward.
Thanks, Ellen. Sarah's next.
Thanks. Similar to everyone else, I think this is really exciting that this is being put together and it's happening so quickly. I have two quick questions, maybe. I think it's food, awesome, food trucks. Where are you envisioning that they will go? Are they going to take, I mean, they're big. So are they going to be actually on the site, or are they going to be more like food stalls?
Well, it will mainly be food stalls. We are still working out the details on the food truck. Dana is taking over responsibility for doing all that. As I say, she's done this many times in many venues in this area. And by the way, as far as knowing where people find out about this, one of her great strengths is being able to use social media to market throughout the area. And
that was my second question.
yeah. And she's a master at it, and she always gets crowds at every one of her events, and that's why all the other groups outside Ann Arbor have been using her. So we'll get some great data from social media, and we'll use it any way that people would like us to use it.
She sounds excellent, because I was just sort of thinking through like, how are people going to find out about this, and what sort of marketing plan? And we do at work like a lot of like sponsored posts, so they come up on your Facebook feed, like whether or not you like any sort of page. I'm
Right.
assuming that Dana knows all about that stuff more than I do, but that's awesome. That was my second question. How are you going to get the word out? Because to get good data, we want as many people to come as possible and enjoy the event. Thank you. This looks like a lot of work. I'm excited.
Yeah, and also the reason why we were originally going to try and do it a little earlier, but we thought we'd better have the students back before we do this.
Good point. Yeah.
Anyway.
Jennifer, I don't know if you have your hand still up, or did you raise it again? Okay.
No, sorry about that. I just didn't take it down.
No worries. No worries. Okay. So are there any other member updates before we move on to the next item on the agenda? Ellen.
Yeah, well, another activity that's in the works, I've been involved since 2014 with other organizations to have program on Peace Day and on Earth Day and other times. And so during the week of Peace Week, which should be from Sunday the 19th of September through that week, and International Day of Peace is Tuesday the 21st. We'll be having activities around what is this park, and how the culture of peace and nonviolence is a municipal endeavor as well as a global endeavor. And we'll get application, all that through the community services, and you'll all be given some opportunity to participate and suggest how peace and the culture of peace and fostered can best be done on this place. I'd bring to attention, and maybe it got circulated, that the Conference of Mayors for Peace, which involves 8,038 different cities around the world, has issued a statement urging that the local groups see that the culture of peace and nonviolence is an essential sense in local municipal development as well as in global development. So we're trying to put that forward during Peace Week. Any help and suggestions greatly appreciated.
Thank you very much, Alan. Unless there are any other member updates, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda. So why don't we go ahead and do that? And so this is a follow-up from the July 7th meeting. And I'll invite Erica to comment here a little bit as well. You know, one of the items, as I recall, coming out of the July 7th meeting was to bring something forward, you know, as promptly as possible to council. And so, you know, keeping in mind that we are an advisory a body that is designated to make recommendations, Eric and I had a conversation to try and actually put some pen to paper. And so, you know, feel free, Heather, if you have the ability to share some of this, I can walk folks through, and Erica can, you know, feel free to interrupt me as well. And, you know, if we think this is good, bad, or indifferent, we can, you know, revise or throw it out or do whatever. It does not matter to me. But I think our goal was to honor the intent of what came out of that July 7th meeting, and trying to make a formal recommendation to council and get city staff moving, ideally, on some of our recommendation. Erica, did you want to add anything before we went through?
Yeah, I guess just a little bit. I've talked since our last meeting. Heather and I have chatted about this, and also Frank and Rita and I have chatted a little bit, and most recently Adam and I did. So one of the pieces that I was struggling with a little bit, I also talked to John Fournier about it as well. But really just trying to think through exactly what council might be approving. And so I appreciate Adam really did a lot of work putting this handout together. I think it's a good framework for thinking through maybe what we might be asking sort of staff to start considering. I think, Adam, I'll let you kind of walk through the bullet points in the document, but it provides a nice framework for thinking about how the city might start exploring opportunities for immediate activation with food trucks and other potential vendors, and developing a model for that. And then, you know, if for some reason that the financial model for that doesn't work, because obviously one of the challenges that we have right now as a community is that, you know, outside of the farmers market, we don't really have we don't have staff that does programming for public spaces, and so there's nobody really to tap into for this. And this is obviously not, at least we often talk a lot about the top of the library lot. Obviously, we're also talking about the Liberty Plaza as well, but the library lot is not yet designated as a park space, and so it becomes a little challenging to think about. We've as a group certainly gone through the, you know, who's going to manage and do the maintenance of this, who will actually spend their time during the week if this was staff doing doing the programming. So this creates a little bit of a framework for that. And actually, when I talked to John Fournier about this week, he had some interesting ideas about looking to some other communities about how that might work as well. And if that doesn't work, then also just providing some staff feedback around what the costs about this, what the limitations might be, and really starting to actively partner more with nonprofits in the community. But Adam, I'll let you speak in more detail to the bullet points.
Sure. Thank you, Erica. And, you know, I think part of this really came from the fact that that it's a city-owned property, and we need to figure out how the city is going to interface with it one way or another in order to make some things happen. And certainly, I think, Jeff, your report is showing that you can do great things with well-meaning people who are driven to do it. And I think what our thought process in the July 7th meeting was, we need to get the city to help create an effort to support the organic efforts like yours. So frankly, it's a great segue. As we kind of came out of that July 7th meeting, we made a recommendation, and this is paraphrased. Feel free to wordsmith as folks would feel necessary, but recommend to the Ann Arbor City Council to direct city staff to plan and to activate the surface parking lot of the library structure for regular and recurring use by food trucks and carts and other light commercial vendors such as artisan pop-ups, etc. Those are the two things I know that really were highlighted in the survey. And in making this recommendation, Center of the City Council of the Commons urges City Council and staff to these three sub-points here. Make use of any and all existing use processes from like spaces and activities, examples being farmers markets, street fairs, etc. There are many other examples too that could be utilized here. To aid activation of the lot, including but not limited to the application processes for vendors, cleaning, health and safety management, marketing, and external engagement. I put a note in here that our council urges the city to really not reinvent the wheel to the extent possible and use best practices. Doesn't have to be Ann Arbor best practices, but best practices in general associated with similar activities. Figure this is not really rocket science, and there are a lot of good ideas out there, and let's borrow them. Second point, work with the center of the city block partners, including the library and private businesses, to collectively ensure the activation is successful, noting that some planned and recurring activities might not be in, i.e. described them as core competencies, but essentially the day-to-day activities of individual block partners. Engage block partners to bring vendors to the space that supplement and complement their day-to-day activities and serve the community. And then finally, I think it's the final sub-bullet point here, create an activation strategy that deliberately creates planned reoccurring activities and markets them in the community. Obviously something we talked about with regard to the fan event. In doing so, the Council of the Commons urges the city to put together particular emphasis on the attraction of minority and women-owned vendors, as well as the creation of activities that attract diversity of participants as reflected in Ann Arbor's values. And then there are a couple of other points. Heather, if you could scroll down.
Sure thing. Can you see it all?
Mm-hmm. And then finally, if necessary and or helpful, the Council of the Commons can designate members to work with city staff to develop the activation plan, having gone through the vision session on 7/7 themselves. And so we could certainly appoint folks who would like to take on that role. And then finally, and this speaks to the point that Erica brought to, if ultimately the city does not have the ability to or desire to dedicate staff to this effort, then we really do need to figure out an alternative way to create these recurring activities, and plan them out. And so, the city should just create a process by which nonprofits and other external organizations can apply and market it and get it going in a very prompt fashion. So I think that was sort of the final point. Basically, if we're going to run into just points where we need staff time and it's just not going to happen within the city, then we need to figure out another way to engage the short-term activity. And so that was what that final point is. So I offer this, we have this only for food for thought, try and synthesize what came out of the 7-7 meeting and, move something forward to city council to get a reaction, frankly, one way or another. And I feel free if we want to keep it on the screen or go back to the full screen. I don't have a preference.
And Adam, I don't know if you can see, but I see 3 hands up, Jeff, Alice's, and Frank's. And again, if people want me to keep this up, I can. If not, we can go back to looking at each other.
We can go back. I think they're just.
Yeah, why don't we go back, and then Jeff, why don't you go ahead, and we can always pull it back up if we need to.
Yeah, I just wanted to say this is great in general. I want to be as supportive as I can in any way I can be. I think you'll find some of the things helpful to whatever way it goes down, from what we're going to do with FAN. Certainly, for example, Dana has a rigorous and effective vendor selection process, vendor application process she's used over and over again throughout the community, which might be helpful or may not in this context. So I would offer that as one example. The other thing is she's been very focused on diversity and inclusion in getting, all different kinds of people engaged with stuff. And so she knows how to do that and wants to do that. So we have some ways of doing that that have been developed already and can be made available, and marketing strategies and so forth. So like I said, we offer that. We might be able to generate an infrastructure that could serve either purpose, whether it goes down the city line or down a more private sector or nonprofit line. But I think we're going to be able to put together something that might be useful to either party, and we do that in all humility, not trying to dominate the process or say we should be doing it or anything like that. Thanks.
Sure. Thanks, Jeff. And definitely, I think a lot of complementary pieces here too. Alice, and then we'll do Frank.
Okay. Oh, I'm not muted. Okay. I did send. I'll disclose that I did send as soon as I saw it a short email to Erica and Adam and Heather with just a few tiny little changes just to reinforce what I think the clarity that would be helpful. But I noticed one more. We ought to get the right name for the current name for this space, I think, is the Library Lane parking garage. And we would have to say something like Library Lane, the surface parking on, I don't know how we say it, but we should call it the correct thing rather than the library lot, because that sort of infringes on the library's actual surface parking, which is behind the library. So we want to make clear that we're not making assumptions about somebody else's property. But the other things were pretty simple. And I didn't say much about that last paragraph, which I think is much more important than my first or second reading of it, because our two friends who were supposed to be here tonight who are not, Mara Thompson, and please remind me of our friend in the permitting process for events. I don't remember her name. She was
Deborah
here last
Williams.
meeting.
Deborah Williams.
Deborah Williams, yes. I think some people may have the impression that she would be that person, but that's obviously something entirely different from what's suggested in that last paragraph. The fact that we don't have a city employee that is dedicated to doing the things that, for instance, Parks seems to do. They have a program that they, that's the closest thing I can think of is the programming that they do for the park system. We don't have that one though we have separate things going on for, say, the farmer's market or the Cobblestone Barn. Again, the names of these things, I just know where they are. But the one on Packard and Cobblestone Farm is what I'm talking about. So those special properties that Parks has that I don't think they even do the programming for those. They have other groups that do it. So whether we're talking about enhancing the relationship between the nonprofits or the ex officio or whatever kind of group we're talking about that sort of shepherds the programming for those special properties. Are we trying to find yet another one for this space? Or, we don't even know what the possibilities are or what we would recommend in terms of someone dedicated to programming for this particular property. So I'd like to find out. I'd like us to find out make some kind of stab at identifying not necessarily an existing person, but a structure for that process, like Cobblestone does its own programming, Farmers Market does its own programming, and a few others also do their own programming. So that's something to think about.
Excellent. Thanks, Alice. And I do have a draft with many of Alice's comments reflected in them that I've just thrown together right before the meeting too. Frank, and then Stephen.
Yes, I'm glad we had a chance to walk through this point by point, because my quick reading of this document earlier didn't really bring out its full potential, I think. I guess where it led me to focus, granted our entire site is not parkland, but Liberty Plaza is, and it seems like we have a reservoir of compatible related knowledge in the farmers market area, where there is a staff and there's a history, and it's just not farm market vendors. There are other events that take place there. It just seems that there's a reservoir of expertise there that should be brought to bear in some creative way. I'm sure if we were to arrive on Monday morning and say, can you layer this onto your already heavy workload, that would not be welcomed. But is there a way to, it's sort of in a interim process, moving us to a final solution, to really draw on that expertise of the farmers market staff? I don't know if they have a separate advisory board or anything like that. The other thing that occurs to me is, what is the relationship between farmers market and Carytown and surrounding businesses? There may be some important learnings there in terms of how the market relates to those business interests and resources. So I'm pretty excited all of a sudden about how to really use an existing resource to advance our knowledge and activity here.
And I will just jump in and add that we did reach out to the farmers market manager, and she's very helpful, and she provided us the existing form that they have for food trucks to apply to their food truck rallies. So I think they'll be a great resource to go forward. The deeper knowledge about how Carytown and the farmers market intersects, we haven't asked that question, but we can, I'm sure, find out more about that.
It might be appropriate to invite whoever is the person running the farmers market to join one of our meetings for a more iterative conversation. Okay.
Stephen, I think you're up next.
Thank you. And thank you for putting this together. I knew that thank you, Alice, for finding some improvements. I looked for typos and things, but I didn't find any. I think I understood the sort of what was in the document. And I think I agree with sort of what it put forward. As I understood it, it's basically, I guess, 3 parts, and the first part has like 3 subparts. Like make a plan and have the plan make use of existing processes in terms of how to actually activate the space. And maybe in the near term, some of that is the existing city staff And maybe in the future you look towards making it into a park and so, whatever comes there, but don't overcomplicate it. I think the actual words "don't reinvent the wheel" were in there. The second part was engage with the Black partners, sort of, create the, I guess for this one, I'm a little confused what we're asking the city to do, beyond sort of create the conditions for success, or at least somehow we are signaling that we want to engage with the Black partners. But what I think I also read there was that we don't want to confuse it for somehow like some obligation of consensus with all of the Black, or that we have to go, anyone has a veto or something like this, but that we welcome input, and that where there's this sort of win-win for individual Black partners as to a certain topic, that it makes sense, then we should pursue that. And then planned recurring activities is another thing that is there that makes a lot of sense. And then the other two sort of big points were, yes, we could have a liaison to interact. You don't need to try to get the entire Council of the Commons in the room to do something. And then this concept of, I guess, as I perceive it, maybe more of a long-term arrangement, but have some sort of nonprofit, as I'm understanding it, maybe that's sort of managing the space or helping to deal with the programming, the scheduling, coordination with other nonprofits about how they'll use the space, whatever that is. What I raised my hand for was the part that I'm not sure that I did see in there. Like, I'm curious about this MOU with the DDA. And if this is a document where we're going to go ask the city to do something, I think we should encourage them to finalize an MOU with the DDA for the use of the space. And I don't know, and maybe this is a question as to what the status of that is. And if that's already moving along, we don't need to say it here, then fine. But that's something that I think maybe even comes before these talks about sort of how, okay, how do we get people activating the space? First, let's make sure we button up that point with some sort of MOU about using the space.
And I'm going to jump in here. Please correct me if Heather, if I've got this wrong. My sense is that the DDA doesn't necessarily need to authorize the city using the space, but if there was, for example, the MOU that's sort of being considered, the partners are still being worked out, whether it's the DDA or city or both that might be involved. The last bullet point was really focused in on, if right now for maybe budgetary reasons, it doesn't seem feasible to do ongoing programming for this space, that we need to try to develop an alternative nonprofit model. And so that's where the MOU would come into, would be utilized. So it's kind of suggesting an either or proposition. Ideally, that the city is utilizing its current resources to figure out a model for kind of financing and program, doing some short-term activation in the space. But if that doesn't seem feasible, we determine that is a much larger cost than we realize. It comes back to city council for a vote. There's not support there for doing that, that there is interest from the commission to saying, okay, well then let's create another alternative model that has a viable path forward.
I think Erica hit the nail on the head, basically, in terms of the intent. Stephen, to your point, though, regarding the MOU, the DDA to keep cars off the space in general, do we have an update on the status of that, Heather? Do you know where that's at?
I don't know completely where that's at right now. That was a process that was occurring between the city administrator and the DDA, and the attorneys needed to be involved because it's a parking agreement that already exists that needs to be modified, that deals with revenue that's generated from the parking that's there. So the details of that were being hashed out. I haven't had a chance to talk to Maura in recent days to get a status, but I will reach out to her to find out more. And then I think when we have a permanent city manager in place again, then we'll be able to move that forward again.
Maybe just a lawyer thing, but it piqued my curiosity.
Yeah.
MOU, what's happening with that? So.
Right. Well, I think there's two separate, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think there might be two separate MOUs that we're talking about. So one is the parking agreement. If we want to permanently remove parking from the top of the structure, then that needs to be worked out between the city and the DDA. As far as then the second MOU would be defining that relationship that we enter into with a nonprofit to manage events occurring at the space.
So I guess my comment to clarify is directed towards that first MOU, towards the first step of just kind of getting a clarifying with DDA about getting parking off the top, and using, whatever that would entail.
Yeah, so and that would be the permanent removal. Right now, there's a process in place that we can have temporary removal. That's been happening on weekends to allow for the gardening. It can happen really at any time if a group applies. So to do a night of food trucks or something like that should be no problem in the interim.
Yep, understood. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Stephen. That's great feedback. Rita, you're up next.
Thanks. I just want to add some real specifics as suggestions to include in terms of potential recurring events. And those are events like festivals, Taste of Ann Arbor, the Green Fair, 4th of July, that could use some additional physical space to have some really good events. So I don't know if those necessarily need to be in the document that you created, which I think is great, but just if we have those in mind to encourage them, I think that would be really great. That's it.
Rita, I'm all for giving more ideas because I find that's always helpful to the conversation. So I did throw those just now in this revised document.
Great.
We've got Alan and then Alice.
Yeah, thank you. This is a good summary and a good start in getting the city involved in this. There were a couple of points. I do think we need to get this block group together, begin to, so that people on the block can begin to see one another and see how the whole block can find benefit in these initial and ongoing activities. I heard from Steve, I think in the last meeting from Parks, that there were actually facilities that might be available. This is going to need tables. Are there tables and chairs available in city facilities that could be used for these events rather than the nonprofits having to locate those or buy them or something separately? And other resources from the city that could be made available. We need storage space for stuff between events. And there's been a long need call for, as part of this, that Wi-Fi be made available on this. Can this sense of the city resources being directed to facilitating the activation, see how the Wi-Fi storage and existing tables and chairs be available. Thank you.
For sure. I think to the point that you just made, Alan, our thought process in putting this up for consideration was really to test the water and get things going with the city to really see if we're going to be able to have the city manage these planned type of recurring events. And if that's not the case, then the point you just made around the use of other city-owned property, like tables and chairs and things like that, becomes a very relevant point if it's offloaded to a nonprofit. So,
I really see that the management of this is going to be in the world of voluntary nonprofit. That is much more the model of the commons, and seeing the city to set up some management program. And we just have to figure that out over time. Initially, we got a group that's ready to begin, and everybody that can cooperate in that city and the nonprofits will just see how it works out. Long term is another question.
Alice, and then Sarah.
Yeah, I just had a brief reference to Rita's comment about other events. It would be nice if we perhaps if attached to this, there could be an asterisk in the paragraph in the recommendation, but put an addendum of as many of those kinds of events as we can think of, instead of putting them in the body of the recommendation. That would be one way to is just attach a list of examples rather than leave out, so many that might be useful, including the two that I thought of just now, as Alan talked about tables and chairs. Huron River Days, sponsored by the Parks, I think, and Green Fair, sponsored by the city, that I don't know if they will continue after this disruption of events that we've had, but they did have tables and chairs, which I don't think were provided by each group representing something to do at a table or a booth. So I think Alan is right, and so are you, Adam, that this can come along later. But as far as the events that are used as examples, we could attach a list that's more extensive if we wish. I think that would be one way to cover the territory.
Absolutely. Thanks, Sarah. You're up.
Thanks. Well, first of all, thanks, Adam and Heather and Erica, for putting this together. I think this is a really good summary from that July 7th meeting, which feels like way more than a month ago for some reason to me. It's been a really long month. I'm curious if, does this, in your minds, does this come with any sort of funding ask? And I think either way, it should sort of be clear. It says it directs. Do we think this is within the scope of, what we already had, like Heather's time funded to do? And are there any other funding asks that would be part of this? Or is this more just these are things that we can do within the scope of what we've been given and would not require additional funding, just knowing that we don't have a lot. And I think the funding that we just got is earmarked for this design process. If the answer is no, that's awesome. But I think we should sort of say somewhere that this does not require, this is not an ask for funding. It's an ask for, it's within the bounds of whatever we kind of assumed that staff would already be working on with this group, maybe. I don't really know how to say that, but I don't know if that came up at all when you were putting this together.
What I would hope, honestly, is that this is not a funding ask. I think that I think City Council has allocated funding for this initiative this year, and the focus has been on the design, long-term design. When I talked to Mr. Fournier about this, he suggested that there might be some opportunities to, through sort of the permitting fees or something like that, for ongoing events to, especially if this, to then fund maybe a part-time, some part-time work from the city, because, I don't think we're talking about, especially if we keep this really simple and it's not different types of events, if we're just keep it simple and it's food trucks, so maybe it's a food truck area for the next bid, and that happens, that provides an opportunity for, but there's still work that's needed, even if it's really simple, right? There's still maintenance and monitoring and cleanup, and there's costs associated with that, and there's cost of coordinating and working with those vendors and different things like that. And so this is not, everybody at the city is working hard and probably already has too many things on their plate to do. And so, but there is interest in trying to figure out how this works. And so this, I think the hope of this is that it's broad enough that maybe there can be a few internal meetings to think about how this might play out, and if this is realistic, if there's an opportunity, and maybe the timeline isn't quite as quick as everybody at this table might hope, but maybe it gets things in really going and getting something ready, happening on a regular basis there. So I don't think we know yet how this is going to play out. And the alternative is also, no, this is, this is really a budgetary ask. And council can consider that. Or, we say, okay, let's move to the nonprofit model.
Yeah, I'll leave it to you guys as to whether or not you think it's even worth bringing up funding within this. I just on like a first reading, and I appreciate going through it step by step, because I think similar to Frank, I read through it just initially and read it a little bit differently. I was kind of like, how do we pay for this? But I think the ask really is more like, these are the directions we want to go. I think this group, if council wanted, could, potentially assist in some of these activities. But I think you're right. It's sort of up to council as to like what the directions need to be. But funding came up immediately in my mind, so it may be worth thinking about how to address it within this document.
Do you think that councils will have that question? So if this group wants to provide direction on that, that is certainly fine. But if we want to keep it broad, that's okay too. I personally don't necessarily think it should be a funding ask at this point, because I think some of these things can be done like very low, like potentially just staff time costs that we already hopefully have allocated through Heather, or no cost. But I think we won't really know until some of this stuff is approved and we get going.
Yeah, I would just say certainly thinking about. I would say just allowing creativity, right? I think the goal, as we originally wrote it, was basically to try and tell City Council, this is what our recommendation is. And so please take action on it, direct staff to take action on it. And then that will help us flush out exactly where the hurdles are. And maybe we can try and create some creative solutions. And, that's part of the reason, we put the option of having some members of this council serve alongside to try and basically provide for that creative insight as well. So that's the only thing that I was thinking of. I certainly would not want to put up any walls before we necessarily get there, especially given, maybe there's an option of some of the fee money or something that could pay for limited costs that would be incurred. So that's the only thing. Jeff.
You mean Frank?
You mean Frank, not me. I didn't have my hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you did. I apologize. Frank, it's all you.
I shaved my beard off.
Frank's hand is up.
I think we have the right team working on this. Adam, Erica, and Alice. I think you're the right trio to sort of broach this and kind of navigate the halls of the City Hall, the halls of City Hall. My other comment is, and I don't want to put Steve on the spot, but if he thinks there's an opportunity to access tables, chairs, benches that might be in storage, that could be used for this series of events that are being planned for the fall. Number one, is that a possibility? Number two, how do we get to the key to the storage locker?
I happy to be put on the spot. I have no idea of the answer to that question, but I'm happy to try to find out and see if the park staff has some sort of answer, what that is, where that is, and if it exists, how we might get our hands on it. So
okay, thank you very much.
Excellent. Well, seeing no other hands up, I'm happy to. I do have a draft that I've incorporated Alice's comments into. Knowing the desire, at least expressed by folks participating in the 7-7 meeting, of moving as quickly as possible on getting to council. I'd like to see how folks feel about sort of approving, at least in concept, this statement, with some of the feedback, and so that we can take it to council. I feel like that we're at a point now, we've had a couple of meetings. Is that something that people feel comfortable with? Do they feel like this document in general summarizes the recommendation as agreed upon by the group in July?
Do we need a straw poll or something like that? Just, I mean, I don't think we have to do I mean, how do you ask for a vote on sentiment? You know,
I would love if the commission tonight would vote to recommend this to council with incorporating the comments that came from the table tonight around sort of Alice's input, and I think there were a few other little small bullet points that got incorporated in as well. If there's agreement on that, then I can make sure it gets on the August 16th council agenda, and it would be nice to have that come with, you know, a vote of recommendation.
Yeah. So Erica, that almost sounded like a motion. Do you want to make a motion?
I think it's a great idea. Are we seeking the sentiment of the group almost on the process point? Like, should we take a thing to council and say, here's what we think you ought to do, or how you should be thinking about this?
Yep.
Fully, totally agree. Erica, it sounds like you're volunteering to speak in you know, positive tones about this at the meeting where it comes up. Yeah, fully agree. I don't know if it's a straw poll time or if I'm seconding something, but yeah, count me in.
Before we get into an actual motion, since we don't have one on the floor, are there any concerns with doing it? I certainly don't want to rush anybody, but obviously there does appear to be a lot of angst to get going.
Well, if you just want a vocal opinion, I think this is pretty close, as close to well polished as it will be once you incorporate what you heard tonight. And what is the harm? I mean, I think it's a good move to really, in spite of all the things that are going on at City Council, I think it's a good move to send them something that's more concrete than, please let us do these things.
For sure. Alan, you've got your hand up. I don't know if Jeff wants to go after Alan.
Yeah, well, I basically go along with this. I made a few comments I'd like to see incorporated. Yeah, when we have a document that's given to us on the day we're supposed to be reflecting on it, it's I don't want to postpone it, but in general, it would have been nicer if we had seen this a week ago. And I hope that the thoughts that I added on can get put into it, and maybe there should just be a day that people who want to make sure they have their nuance included can give them to you or whoever is a drafter, that it goes to the city council. It's not asking for any money. It's basically asking that they move forward with getting this activated. I would hope it's not a big problem. If there's any money involved in it, it's of course going to be a problem, but that's not what we're asking for. And I think the emphasis that at this point we're looking to see the financing through the private fundraising and the nonprofits. And that's from the beginning been my sense of how this actually, the Commons is actually financed by the people who are of the community that feel they'll find the benefit from this. So, yes, let's go forward with it for the next council meeting.
All right, thanks, Alan. Erica, you got your hand up.
Yeah, I would hope that just kind of, I'd actually be rather not bring forward kind of additional, I appreciate, Ellen, your sort of thoughts around the Wi-Fi and different in storage and stuff like that. I think that's come in the form of another resolution to council previously. And so I'd rather keep this limited to short-term activation of the space, specifically around what came out of the our working meeting in early July, because I think there was pretty strong consensus around sort of the food truck activation. And so that feels like there was unanimous sentiment around that. And so I'd love to be able to take that to council and get staff, brainstorming on that idea and moving it forward, because I think some of the other ideas we've gotten some feedback around some of the challenges that the city's struggling with on those. But this one is hopefully one that's We already have that. There's already some resolutions in the past addressing those issues. This would be kind of a new request to staff. And so, and I'd also rather not, honestly, have a whole lot of feedback coming in. If there's on this document, I'd love that the group to be voting on what is being agreed upon tonight based on the document that you've seen and all seen feedback on, and that's what I'm taking and going to attach to Legistar, have attached to Legistar.
So knowing that, I've got a revised version with a lot of the comments that were incorporated tonight. Heather, do you want to allow me to share my screen, and I can just pull it up, and then we can take a look, and then hopefully we can just, excellent. Okay, can you see the document?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what I have here, I'll just try and summarize the changes that I made, not the full thing again. So I added from some of Alice's comments, some and many examples that were created here. I did put them in here. I did also add an asterisk at the bottom. We can make an amendment here. But we have street fairs, the Taste of Ann Arbor, Independence Day, Here in River Days, Green Fair, Festivals, Sonic Lunch, et al., and the asterisks. I did clean up this naming of the lot to what I believe is accurate here. Please correct me if I'm wrong on this, but aid activation of the library surface parking lot.
It's
Library-
would be
Library
capital
Lane.
Library
Library
Lane.
Library Lane.
Capital Lane.
Capital. All right. Library Lane, surface parking lot. We'll have this referenced.
Oh, also at the top.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so Library Lane, surface parking lot. Okay. I don't think anything else was cleaned up in this first bullet point. Block partners. I did enumerate the Ann Arbor District Library so that we just have that in there for point clarification. I did amend the language. I had originally core competencies. I changed that to not be within the expertise of individual block partners in these last two sentences here. And changed the word urges to encourages. And I also eliminated the subset from this bullet point right here to just designate members. And I think that's it.
Could you change? It seems awkward to say particular emphasis on the attraction of minority. I think on attracting minority would be more direct, because we want to. Who are we attracting? We're attracting the minority, so we want to attract them, be engaged. It encourages the city. Encourages attracting. How did I have that down? Encourages emphasis on attracting minority, and I think we are talking to the city. Encourages attracting minority and women. Leave out the city. They know who we're talking. We're talking to them.
Encouraging.
And we also say that we're referring to diverse participants as reflected in Ann Arbor's values. A diverse, is there such a thing as a diversity? Attract diverse participants.
It would seem appropriate, given that the city just established a 30-person steering committee on equitability.
Yeah, there we go.
That we should reference that group to be
And we did.
Connected here with that, the equitability steering committee.
Oh, I think that burdens it a little bit too much. But because the city knows who they have to elect, that they've just done that.
All right, I think that last bullet point makes sense.
Before we move on to that bullet point, I'm not sure minority is really the best term to be using. I think we might want to spell out what exactly we mean. Like, are we talking Black owned? I think it's more
of color.
Yeah. I don't think minority is like
LGBT,
a great term anymore.
All right.
The alphabet of people.
You can play with that, Adam. I trust you.
Can we say encourages the city to work to attract diverse vendors, as well as the creation of activities that attract diverse participants?
Well, that might confuse it a little bit, because like, are we like diversity and like what they're offering, which I also think is important. But I think that
what are we talking
is
about?
like, I don't know. Both.
As reflected in Ann Arbor's values, assuredly gets us to all of that, because as just mentioned, we've got a 30-person commission on diversity. The city is very out front on these topics. And so they'll know what we mean, I think, when we say do it in the way that you need to be doing.
So then maybe we say reflected in Ann Arbor's values of like social equity and racial justice or something like that. Like, because we have values about all kinds of things. So if we're talking about specifically like equity and things like that, like an equity in all forms, then maybe we can just add that. And I think you maybe could say like a diversity of vendors, and then we could sort of take that as whatever it is. It'd be like all inclusive maybe.
I like it. In the prior bullet point, can we include, it says work with COC block partners, including the AADL and private businesses. Can we put the DDA in there? Can we put Ann Arbor District Library, comma, DDA and private businesses? Is that too much to put them on the spot like this?
No.
Are they a block partner though?
But that's the thing. So I raised my hand a minute ago to ask, like, when we say the COC block partners, who are we talking about? We don't currently have any partnerships, right? So that to me felt really ambiguous. If we're going to take this to city council, if I was being asked that question or asked to vote on that, I think I would consider that as like, well, who are your partners? That's a logical question.
Should we call them neighbors or something?
Property and business owners.
Sarah, what did you just say?
Property and business owners.
Block participants.
I like that a lot. That's good.
I like participants because it allows folks the opportunity to participate at an engagement which is comfortable for them. It doesn't make assumptions, I guess.
And maybe
I really do like adding the Downtown Development Authority, because they are in charge of and are responsible for the space itself, you know, even though it's
I agree with Alice.
Could we even say and others TBD or others?
Yeah. Comma private businesses, comma and others, I think would be great.
I guess what's giving me pause is it almost seems as though we have a coalition of partners who are either supportive or who have somehow raised their hand or are engaged in this process, when that necessarily isn't the case for all of whom might come underneath this umbrella at a later date. And I want to make sure that we aren't exclusive or, I guess, giving the perception as though we haven't had those conversations and welcomed that dialogue in a way that would be meaningful and helpful to what we're trying to accomplish.
Good points.
Yeah, I think we're getting there.
Take
I
a
think
quick.
instead of work with, it's like initiate conversations with or something, because we really haven't started this, right? That's been part of the sticking point.
Correct.
That's not bad. That's not bad.
How about what if it isn't even something like solicit involvement from, something that creates it as a we are welcoming. We are a body that is welcoming and inclusive and wants to, as we talk through what that means, but welcoming and inclusive of support, right? Because we can't do this on our own. And I think that's a great acknowledgement of this is a community space that we're trying to activate with community support and involvement.
I totally love it. We could also say engage the Block participants, but solicit involvement is great.
We are hoping for Block partners. For the recommendations of the Center of the City Task Force, it was to create a block group of all the people who are on the block to see how they relate to this and make this an open proposition. That is what needs to be convened. That should have been convened in March of 2020 and is still waiting.
Well, yeah, and this is a way to get the city to maybe help us solicit that involvement. I think this is a perfect place just to kind of put a nudge in the middle of it right there.
And I would suggest that our Block partners have probably been focused a lot on pandemic needs, and maybe this is their own. So we're entering a time that maybe they have a little bit of space to start thinking about some other issues.
I agree.
Any other final wordsmithing here, or are we feeling pretty good with this?
Well, I guess I would, when we add on other endeavors like Sonic Lunch and Independence Day, I would be happy, since we have been doing Earth Day and Peace Day, to just put those in as community events to honor appropriate days. Peace Day is coming up.
There's a difference, though. Yeah. I think we're going to really get lost in this if we keep putting them in that paragraph and we don't have a long list to add at the end,
How about this?
Unless we repeat those and add the others.
We can. Yeah,
we've got one.
I do have a footnote down here. How about this? Why don't we? We can, if folks are amenable, if we agree to this language tonight, with the one asterisk that we can create a list of suggestions and submit that along with this as the asterisk, and then we'll take that piece out of that sentence. That way we've got a little bit of couple days or something like that to throw on suggestions to an addendum that Heather can collect and attach to this. Does that sound fair?
Yeah, and that way we don't even have to put any, we can say, instead of giving those examples, we can just say, see additional list.
Yep, exactly.
With the asterisk.
Yeah.
And then just a small edit, Adam, just making Block participants consistent in that paragraph. There's a couple other references to Block partners.
Yes, good catch. Okay.
Good catch.
And we may just want to change the date up at the top to include reference to today's meeting as well, or not, or not include the date, whichever.
I have one suggestion would be to include 2 or 3 standing activities like Taste of Ann Arbor, and etc., but only 2 or 3, and then direct them to the longer list, because I don't want them to miss the category of existing programming that could be shared on that space.
Yeah,
for sure. We can do that. We'll leave a couple in there and then direct them to a longer list that folks help compile.
Thank you.
You, Frank.
Any other changes?
Do not let perfect be the enemy of good.
Amen.
My favorite phrase, Alice. What any policymaker would take should take seriously.
I am really impressed. This is great.
Thank you, Adam. You did a lot of work on this, as creating the framework and
Thank you, Adam.
doing the text.
It's great. I love it. It's great.
Problem. All
And
right.
you type and you type really fast.
I don't have a ton of time, so typing fast is a necessity. So how about this? Can we get a motion on this language with that one asterisk of
I
the
move.
list? Okay, moved by Jeff in his second. All right, second by Rita. I'm gonna stop sharing so that we can all see one another. All in favor, say or raise your hand. Aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Heather, I will send this over to you.
Okay, and just,
Yay.
I have the motion, what I wrote down is motion to send recommendation on food truck activation to council with changes proposed by group at 8/5 meeting included. If that works for everyone.
That's perfect.
Yes.
Okay.
And then,
Wow, look at us. Look at you, I should say.
so we should,
somewhere.
so Heather, if folks would like to add examples, why don't we get those to Heather, try and get them maybe by the end of the day tomorrow to Heather. And she, we can, she can take out the majority of the examples out of that sentence and put them in an addendum as a complete, and send it out to everybody. And then we'll rely on Erica to wield her political gavel at the next council meeting. So, all right.
Yeah, to get this into council's agenda, it would be needed by the end of tomorrow, right?
No, because next meeting is a working session, so it's really the
okay.
Wednesday after that. And so,
Okay.
Heather, I don't know if there's a way for you to. We can talk. I don't know if there's a way for you to kind of move this forward. Because of the time frame, it may be necessary for me to just kind of sponsor it. But
Yeah, if there's time, I can move it in, but if it's kind of late coming in, then you'll need to sponsor it to get it fast tracked.
Okay, sounds good.
Good.
I'm muted. All right. In that case, I think that takes care of the follow-up. We have 7A reflections, updates. I think that pretty much covers it. Do we want to talk about the next two items, considerations for a future design process, and then also potential subcommittees? I know we've had this subcommittees discussion has come up several times. And I think we did a great job at sort of activating a working session, which sort of served as a temporary subcommittee. But it does seem like as we go forward with the future design process, subcommittees could be very helpful. And we could, to the extent folks would like to talk about them tonight, we could do that. We could also submit recommendations to Heather to be distributed to the group around subcommittee ideas. And then try and make those official, or at least organized between now and the next meeting. We've got at least one person with their hand up. Jennifer?
I think I just need a bit of clarification in terms of subcommittees. Is it smaller groups of us, or is it inviting community partners, et cetera, to be part of a subcommittee process?
I think that would largely be up to the group. I'm not sure what the semantics are. Heather, are there differences here?
As far as allowing other community participants, I think that you can do that if you wanted to do that. I think the initial drive my impression was that the initial drive to have subcommittees was to get some stuff done. And so I think the question is right now, are you feeling like you need to divide into subcommittees, or are you feeling like, you know, maybe you can hold that off to maybe for another topic or another time? So I guess that's just like the question to answer.
I think that was just, I know my hand wasn't up, but just to clarify my question, I think to put a finer point on it is there a way for this group to divide and conquer and come back? Like, can we be productive in off times, you know, in between meetings? Or is this something where the intention is to bring in others for a voice? And that's what I think tripped me up a bit. So.
I think just to that point, I mean, subcommittees typically, at least from my experience with other commissions, they are publicly noticed. There's usually a staff person that's staffing them. So I personally am a little, I know there's desire to get things going. I would hate to see like a list of, you know, 7 subcommittees formed with lots of, just because I think it's really, it's time intensive, particularly for Heather. But I think it seems like there's a need for focus on short term, and there's a need for focus on long term.
Rita, and then Alan, and then Frank.
Mine is really a question. It's like, when we thought about subcommittees in the past, or even just now, it's like, what are the kinds of things that we had in mind? I think that would help us. You know, it feels to my reaction right now is like, I'd like to sort of brainstorm the kind of things that we want to have different groups address. And I'll just leave it that simple. Like, what are those things that we need? And if there's a time frame related to them, it would be nice to have that in mind as well.
Alan?
Well, Frank had his hand up first, but if you're calling on me, I would like to see this 8 and 9 put off to our next meeting. We have a 1-hour meeting and we're 51 minutes past that. And I appreciate your smile there, Adam. We had a good discussion, but I think both of these questions about future design and our working groups on more specific questions need more attention. It would seem a good idea, somebody said, to have us each, or those who wish, put in suggestions to Heather, who could distribute those significantly before our next meeting, so that we could have a discussion based on some formulated ideas.
All right. Frank?
Yeah, I just wanted to draw us back for a moment to the working sessions. And we've had one, and I in my mind anticipated there might be additional ones. And I think this iterative process of, you know, short-term, intermediate, and long-term planning probably needs the focus of a working session facilitated. And maybe the question of subcommittees could be addressed in that. I don't know, but I just didn't want us to forget about the working session model that we started last month.
Definitely. Jeff?
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to support Frank on that. I think it's important to have a few more of those facilitated working sessions, maybe not these individual working groups right now. I think Alan's right about that, and others who said that. But I think it would be good to have, or let's say I would like to have maybe 1 or 2 more facilitated sessions, so that we can get, you know, the brain power of the group working together in a less formal setting and, in a more creative circumstance. So I agree with Frank on that. If we could plan that fairly soon, another working session, that facilitated working session, that would be great from my perspective.
Okay. Alice. I think you're muted, Alice.
The picture jumped over to another part of the screen and I couldn't get unmuted. I don't want to miss out an opportunity. I understand the conversations currently about subcommittees, working sessions, and all that. I thought we did pretty good tonight with something tangible to work with. But where we get that from is possibly something to be considered. But number 8, consideration for future design process, goes to a problem I had with the information we got back from Mara Thompson, and it included a very microscopic plan drawing and things like that. That's the kind of thing we need to really line up. I mean, Robert Black just mentioned it at the beginning of our meeting. We need to have a clarity about what the parameters are, about what exists, about what we really want to do physically. Today we've worked with the programming. I think it's wonderful because we've got, it's a way to keep engaged with City Council, to whom we are responsible for our advisory activities. But if we're going to advise on how much money we need, or when to do an RFP or an RFQ, that's the process that we would need to start, but we need more clarity on the information that describes what we're working with. And then to sort out from that what we want to change or how we want to go about working with what we have to work with. And so tonight, I don't think there's enough time to go into, and I can't find the list that Mara ran through of responses to questions. I can't find it anywhere. I printed it out and I can't find it anywhere. But I did find the drawing that I can barely read because it's so microscopic. Those are questions that I think we do need to address if we're going to talk about the design process, the future design process, which isn't possible tonight because we did a good job with what we did work with for tonight. I think it was timely work that we did, but we are really lagging behind in getting, if you'll pardon the word, concrete information about this place that is mostly made of concrete. It's not that we're going to change the concrete, it's what can we do with it pretty much. And that's where we need to have more information, more specific technical information. Even though we're not going to do the design, we do need to scope the work. That's my concern. We don't have enough information to scope the work that we're going to ask someone else to do. And the first thing they would do that we'd have to pay them for is to scope the work. So we want to do that because that determines what we end up with in the end result. That's what I wanted to say just now. And you can go back to whatever bullet point we're at. I don't know. I just needed to get that said.
So it sounds like to me the overarching consensus is that maybe more of these working sessions, full group working sessions, to do some deeper diving into a lot of what Alice just said, frankly, get our questions answered, understanding our parameters. It seems like that's majority of the consensus, rather than, at least at this point in time, breaking off into subgroups. I am all for more less formal working sessions, and would be happy to participate in that. I think that if there's a way, maybe we could, Alice, Heather, and I, and maybe Erica can sit down virtually. In the next few days, we can talk about what some of those questions could be and who we need to get in to answer, and we can maybe provide a list to the council members here about who that could be initially for a working session. Get some feedback and then schedule one based on that. Does that sound like a good plan of action for next steps?
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes, I think so. The I guess I was surprised that it's been 2 months that we've tried to get Colin to come and talk to us about parks, and he made a very good point. Go to the pros plan, and that's readily available. Somebody has to do some homework, and it's whoever can get to it. It's one or more of us in this group that needs to research the questions rather than asking somebody else to go and look at things that they don't have time to look at. I guess because most of the answers to our questions about the relationship between parks and this park are probably in there. I haven't seen it for the past 10 years, but it's been revised a number of times, I'm sure. So it's a good thing to go back to. It's a document we haven't really talked about, and it addresses some of the big questions we have about having Liberty Plaza on this block and how it's related to what we're doing.
So why don't we proceed with that? It seems like we got a lot of head nods, and we'll come back. Heather, if we could get a Zoom scheduled for all of us in the next, 4 of us in the next few days, and talk about what those things are. Then we'll provide a list of items for at least a first working session to council members, and if that list, we solicit feedback, that we'll get to a point where we feel it's acceptable, schedule one, and keep the ball rolling here. Looking at that longer term, vision as the scope of that. And so that sounds good to me. I think we can take that action item back. And at this point, I think that covers our item number 10, next agenda items. If we keep the focus on continuing to drive that ball forward, we will it'll be very clear as to what our agenda looks like. Are there any other items before we go into public comment that folks wanted to make sure we hit on?
Well, I do want to just add my repeated theme that there are certain principles in the development of the commons that we should refresh ourselves about and make sure are included in our thinking of how this process goes forward.
Thank you, Alan. All right, hearing none, nothing else then. Heather, do we have any members of the public?
We have 2 members of the public online and 1 with a raised hand. Robert, go ahead and speak.
Thank you, Heather. This is one of your dedicated and loyal audience members. I sat on every word you said and took notes literally of everything the last 2 hours. It's fascinating to watch a group really work together, and I'm proud of you and happy for you, because I don't know many groups of the dozens I've worked with that have worked so equitably and lived the principles of the commons together. I think you just set aside a subcommittee to work on this thing about background information. Bravo. You also have another opportunity for educating yourselves about the commons. There's at least a subcommittee of 1 involved with that right now, I heard. So please continue on with that. I think this idea of activating the commons with the beautiful work that Jeffrey talked about, Jeff Henney, and also Jeff Crockett, you have these opportunities, the fall food, art, and fun thing picks up two of the key elements of the commons, the food and the art, but also the garden is a teaching metaphor. So this whole idea of education and getting data feedback from the public is really a huge opportunity in the next couple of months. And I would like to think that your data collection should be directed towards, as Alice talked about, this foundational information. And it should be driven towards the idea that you will have some kind of physical manifestation of the commons. Back in March, there was a document prepared that showed a possibility of how to list the physical elements around several categories: a park, a playground, food, and a building. So those are some key elements that you could think about. And then there's the social element of the commons into future thinking about the stage and performance and education, a watershed model, all kinds of different things that could be sussed out in a working session as you move forward. So I'd encourage you to have that facilitated work session. There's a number of independent people who could help you get through that and make a really productive work session, myself included. But there are many others in Ann Arbor too. And the last thing I want to say is that I think it should be clear that you have a clear intention and description of the sponsorship of these events. So it is not to be confused, you said it very well, with the Council of the Commons, because you're an advising group. But I would suggest that you'd consider having a table, a poster, or a booth in the event that is the Council of the Commons, so that people understand the distinctions and roles about this. So kudos, bravo. I just love watching you guys work together. And I wish you good luck in your action research, as Mr. Haber called it. So thank you for a wonderful, productive meeting.
Thanks, Robert.
Okay, and we have a person on the phone. I'm going to press allow to talk, so you should be able to talk now.
Hello, this is Jeff Crockett calling again. I assume you can all hear me.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay, one suggestion for Heather. When I looked at the agenda, the meeting ID is incorrect. I put in the meeting ID when I tried to get into the meeting, and it came back saying it was wrong. So I figured out that the meeting ID was on the television screen, which I copied down, one beginning with 933. But that was not very visible. If you're low vision, that's going to be a problem. So I would suggest that on the meeting agenda, you have not just the correct meeting ID, but then indication that to get into the meeting, it's *9, and then to unmute yourself, *6. So it's written down so that people with limited vision aren't confused. So that is sort of one suggestion. I am very pleased with what I heard at the meeting. Adam, you did a great job in the document you produced. I'm hoping to get some feedback from you all on what you think of the garden. I hope you stop by and take a look. It's reaching its peak, but I'd like to hear some feedback. And also, we're planning on putting up a sign and to sort of indicate that this is a volunteer community garden in the community commons. But I noticed that there's virtually no other signage about the commons. And typically when you have a situation where you have a proposition that's passed, I think it would be a good idea to have this is the future site of the commons as passed by Proposition A, with a little explanation. Because part of the job that we're doing here is promotion. And even though we're having activities, there's still, people are walking by without having a clear sense for what this space is expected to become. So I'm hoping you'll consider some signage. I really like what Frank said about looking at other local resources. And one person you should consider is Grace Singleton, who's the head of the Carytown District Association that we've worked with closely in the Old Fourth Ward about planning events. She could be of some help, I think, in linking perhaps what they're doing with Carytown with potential events on the Commons. The other thing is that the Commons, the idea, I mentioned Plymouth. Plymouth is being facilitated by, I think, the Wilcox Foundation. So you have different towns, particularly like Plymouth, who've had a lot of experience doing this with support from public foundations. So I would strongly suggest that you contact the people in Plymouth, city planner, administrator, and the nonprofit to find out how they work together so you don't necessarily have to reinvent the wheel. And the last thing about promotion is I think we should be actively promoting the Library Green Conservancy. There's been a lot of talk about, well, the city can match funds that are generated with, a private foundation, but I don't think we should just sit and wait for other people to donate. I think all of us, including all of you, should, and including me, should be out there saying, donate to the Library Green Conservancy so we can activate the space. I just think we have to be a lot more active. Thank you very much for your consideration. Good night.
Thanks, Jeff. Heather, do we have any other members of the public?
We do not.
Okay. With that, then Alan, I apologize. We are 9 minutes over our actual 2-hour time, but that means an hour and 9 minutes more than we start. So I apologize. Hope you get some good sleep. Can we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right, seconded by several people, including Mr. Haber. You all have a wonderful evening. I think meeting's adjourned.
Thank you.